Swane here, Miss South Africa 2021, and welcome to our third session of #Be Ready. Today we'll be speaking about all things compliance, and I'm super excited to have a very beautiful woman with me today. And I have Krista from the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, as well as Lalela from KISCH IP. Hello ladies.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, and yourself?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm super excited for you guys to be here so we can get chatting about compliance.
So, yes, I'm Krista. I only use my title when I'm on a scare people, so I'm not going to leave my title out. For all my sins, I'm the Senior Manager for Companies and Close Corporations at the CIPC, which basically entails that I am responsible for the registration, the maintenance, as well as, my apologies, in 15 years I've never figured out a word, the killing off of businesses off the registry. And with that, there's a lot of compliance that also deals with it. So yeah, and I've been with the CIPC for 15 years already.
Oh wow.
I'm furniture.
Very good furniture. Amazing furniture that is.
Well, thank you.
I'm Lalela. I'm a senior associate at KISCH IP. We're a sponsor of MSSA. I deal predominantly with the registration of companies and the annual returns and submissions and ensuring compliance. But our firm also is a specialist intellectual property law firm. We deal with everything from the trademark side to patents, filing designs. We work hand in hand with the CIPC to assist and give legal advice to our clients on how they can basically build a brand, commercialize their business, make money, and make a living.
Oh wow. So it's actually going to be a very jam-packed session. I can't wait to learn so much. So to a lay person like me, compliance basically means following the rules. But what is compliance really within the business world?
So I think from my years of experience, a lot of people think starting a business is just the first step. It's the only step that you have to do. Without quite realizing, depending on the type of business and activities and the industry that you're involved in, you have got a lot of other obligations to comply with. And you're right, it is following the rules.
Yes.
But it's not a checkbox approach to it. You need to add the value. There's reasons why there's compliance obligations, to add the value into your business activities and to protection of your rights.
Oh,
wow. So there's reason for compliance. I know a lot of people don't always see it. It's seen like red tape. It's something that I have to get over. It's time that I have to spend. It's money that I have to spend.
Yes.
And I just would like to advise that it is not necessarily that way. Yes, there are some rules that are frivolous. I'm going to be the first one to admit it, but they are valued and you have to understand it. So depending on your business activity and what you want to achieve, learn the industry, know what your regulator are. Most industries in South Africa are regulated to some sort of extent. And those regulators have pieces of legislation that they have to administer, like POPI and the FICA. FICA is more on your financial side, to opening up your bank account. Then you've got, if you are a financial advisor, for example, or in the financial industry, you've got the FACA that you have to deal with. So learn the industry where you want to do your business at and contact those regulators. Go to their websites, find out what is expected of you. And if you know what is expected, you can always contact them and ask, why is it so?
And I think it's also important to understand the fundamental concept of you starting a business is either to supply products or offer a service, and that you're doing to consumers, to build our economy. So try not to look, yes, I agree with Krista, it's a costly, expensive, and there's always these compliance models that you have to follow, but think about why you have to do it. You're going to be supplying a product to someone. They're going to be using that product. It is government's job, it is people's jobs to make sure that that product is safe, to make sure that it's not a counterfeit product and endangering consumers. So look at who eventually is going to be your clients, your people that you're selling to. You're there to protect them. How do you protect them? By ensuring you meet these compliance obligations, that you deal with, the Consumer Protection Act, you meet the details that are set out there, by preserving someone's privacy and not processing more than you should. Those are the things, by ensuring that people, the consumers, understand it is your brand that I have, and when they go and they make that purchase, they have that trust in that brand. So you've got the trademark to make sure that no one counterfeits that trademark. So compliance is not there just for a checks and balances kind of approach. It's there to protect our economy. It's there to protect consumers. And that's why you have to comply as well.
So what consequences are there if one is not compliant? Like, are there any penalties that you face?
So it will depend on the industry that you're at and the legislation that you have contravened. So some legislation, especially older legislation, is more punitive. Right? It's criminal.
Yes. I'm not mad at that though. I'm not, because I feel like if there are harsher sanctions, people will do what they need to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then we've also got the more, from a regulating perspective, you have got different types of regulations. So, and the more modern ways of doing it is more self-regulation and to decriminalize matters, because you don't want to scare people off for starting a business, taking the risk. And let's be honest, it's a risk-taking exercise.
Yeah.
And you don't want to sit with a whip behind them if you fail.
Your house is gone.
It's not the Middle Ages. So the more modern legislation is where you've got penalties involved. Mm-hmm. So one of the key things with the CIPC is within companies itself, we've moved away from criminalizing most of the offences to more penalty-based. There's one or few things, but those activities will then usually touch on fraud and misrepresentation. Those type of elements will then still carry the criminal offences. But as CIPC, on our compliance side, we understand that people need to run their businesses and it overtakes sometimes. So it's not that we have a soft hand, but we try to understand where you're coming from with your business. Why didn't you comply? And then give you an opportunity to rectify. And it's only if you, and then we've got a lot of negotiations and meetings that we have with these companies. We're talking now usually more with your bigger companies. Say, understand why didn't you comply? And then try to understand. And if we feel strongly enough about the position of the reason for the compliance, we will then go for a step where we issue a compliance notification to tell you have not complied with the X provision of the Companies Act, and then they can take it up on review. So it depends on the legislation, and that's why I said check out who your regulator is within your industry. Mm-hmm. A lot of these regulators have got websites where they will tell you what your obligations are, how things work. Find out, get the knowledge before you start.
Yeah, and I mean practically, when you're starting your business, and the CIPC does a wonderful thing, you plug in your email address and you will get notified, not just on the day, oh sorry, your annual returns are due, we're going to deregister your company if you don't file it. That's not how the CIPC works. They send you reminders. It's 3 reminders that are sent out months beforehand, and they tell you, they'll send their tariffs out so you can budget, because that is part of being and operating a business is budgetary planning, and they'll let you and they'll notify you. Even if you miss that deadline, mistakes do happen, COVID happened, people forgot things. It's not the end of the world with the CIPC. You know, you miss the deadline, you move on. You go back to CIPC and say, okay, right, I've missed my deadline. I do apologize, but I still want to run my business.
Okay.
So you message them, and there's a penalty that you'd have to pay a little bit. But like I said, there's no criminal liability. It's a penalty. So just because you make a mistake, it doesn't mean it's the end of your business. You know, you've got to persevere, and that's the one advice that I can speak to, and you have been speaking to with your viewers. To run a business, you got to persevere.
Yeah.
You know, it's a risky business, but
yeah,
you can't just give up on the first hurdle.
And you have to learn. And the fact of the matter is, you don't know everything. As we sit here, we don't know everything. So, and it's about learning. You must be prepared to learn. Yeah.
Some learning exercises will be a little bit tougher than others, but it's a learning curve, and it can be so amazing if you see the end product of all this effort that you've put in.
I think, don't you think, because it's less punitive now, that people are a little bit lax, like they know you're lenient, so they can get away with a lot, can they?
So very interesting. We were actually speaking about this outside, and we actually track annual returns specifically. So a lot of the compliance elements that people have in different legislations, and especially in the Companies Act, is not a result of a filing. So annual returns is like it's like an annual renewal, having your car renewed every year. So it's a nice check. I call it a checkpoint to see whether what's going on, because you have to do it every single year. And is that we can track it. And I've been tracking, I don't know what comes first, myself or annual returns. So I've been doing annual returns so long. And we've been tracking it. Except for 1 year in 15 years, the compliance rate has actually grown. More companies are filing and CCs are filing annual returns. More companies are filing them within the year that they become due, for example. It is growing. But something very interesting, and I think one of your other questions, we may touch on it, is that we have got so much registrations on new companies that it looks like we are poor in compliance. But our compliance are actually growing, especially on annual returns.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. That's great to hear.
And what's important on annual returns, sorry to interject as well, is that it's an every year thing. It shows your business yourself is growing. It tells the CIPC that you are operating. But it's very important as a business owner to understand what it means for non-compliance. So it may be that there's an opportunity for you to get a penalty and stuff, and you're like, oh, but it's a small penalty, and then you don't want to file. And this is what we were discussing, is people need to also understand something. When you run a business, you have that responsibility to make sure that you're compliant. And you also need to understand that not filing your annual returns eventually puts your company into the deregistration, at risk of being deregistered. And what's more scary is when your company goes into deregistration and you're operating, still continue operating, you don't think of anything because you're like, oh, but I've got a registration number, you become personally liable for all the transactions that are happening for the business, what's happening for the business when you're a director of a deregistered company. So you learn in the beginning, you know,
just do the right thing.
Just do the right thing. You've got that separation of identity with the company, and that's the beautiful thing about registering a company.
But it comes with a responsibility.
But what does it take for you to get deregistered? How long? What must you have done? Is it
Are we supposed to do it quicker? So fortunate for smaller business under COVID, it takes a little bit longer.
But it will happen.
It will happen. So as you said, we automate quite a lot. So very interesting. We receive about over 100,000 annual return filings in a month.
in a month?
In a month.
Hectic.
It's a lot, so that's why it's automated. We did, in the past financial year, we just did under 500,000 new company registrations. The year before, under COVID, it was over 500,000 new companies.
Wow.
If we don't automate and run automated systems in the backgrounds, we have a staff component of 450 people, including our IT department, our finance department, our support department.
Yeah.
We will not be able to deliver the service that we have. So the deregistration process is actually quite automated. So if we got your contact details, please, when you file with the CIPC, put your right contact details on there. Please don't put her beautiful cell phone number for you. She's going to get the reminders. She will not save your business.
No, won't do it.
So and that's why we ask for that detail. So we send you reminders on annual returns. Okay. As I said, the other items for companies in the Companies Act is very difficult to measure. But we send you a reminder a month in advance to say, it's almost time, please get everything ready, here's your links, this is where the websites are, this is how you do it. And then if you don't file, our system keeps track, and then it goes into a second year. No annual return filing after the reminder. Then the Act kicks in and says, after 2 successive annual returns filings not being filed, we put you into deregistration, right? And this is for non-compliance with annual returns. We get other types of deregistrations, which is not relevant at the moment.
Yeah.
And the system does this to you. It's not me, it's not the commissioner, it's not somebody that has a personal vendetta against you.
Okay.
It's a system rule.
Okay.
But very fun about a system rule is you just file and it takes you out again.
Oh, like
just
lovely,
easy.
yeah.
So once you're in the deregistration process, the system will allow you to file. And as soon as you have filed all the annual returns and your financial accountability information or your financial statements, depending on how nice your business did in that year, then the system will take you automatically out.
Okay.
And if you still fail to file annual returns, we will send you registered mail, we'll send you another letter, and then we finally deregister you. But that, yes, there's legal consequence, as Nola has indicated. You become personally liable as a director for all the actions that have occurred during the deregistration. But there's a very fun thing about our corporate legislation. You can still reinstate. You can actually lift up your business, bring it back to life. It's called a reinstatement.
Okay.
But you have to show that you have economic value. Because we've picked up that there's some people that
They weren't transacting.
They weren't transacting for 10 years and all of a sudden they want to come onto the registry just to look that they were in business before. And we find, that's a little bit, we want companies that were actually were doing business. So if you can prove that you were doing business, we put you back in, you file your annual returns, and hopefully you've learned from the experience and that you'll start filing again. So as you can see, we're not punitive when it comes to businesses. If you are running a business, and you've opted for the company registration format, the systems are there, you can actually bring it back to life.
Okay.
So it's very flexible.
That's good to hear.
Because we don't want, we want a registry whereby, if you're doing business in your registered company, we want you on the registry because there's a benefit, and I think we haven't touched on this. You don't have to be a registered company to run a business in the South African environment. You can be a sole proprietor, you can have a partnership.
Yeah.
But as it matures, companies become best. But companies have got the additional benefit, especially for government services, is to check that you are, what your information are, that you are legit.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of registering a company.
It's easy to do due diligence. It's easy to file your BEE status and stuff like that.
All those type of things. So it's got its
And
benefits.
the CIPC has made it easier to register companies, so register
And
companies.
BEs
just do the right
and
thing. Yeah. Basically. So very briefly, the POPI Act, RICA, FICA, and the Consumer Act fall under the regulatory compliance in intellectual property. So who regulates these?
So there are various bodies that regulate each piece of that legislation. So POPIA is regulated by the Information Regulator. It's a relatively new piece of legislation, but they would govern data protection. FICA, also RICA, is regulated by CASA, so it's about communications and stuff, and FICA is regulated with the Financial Intelligence Services, and that is to make sure that, anti-money laundering laws and stuff like that are all followed. So as a business, it's not just the Companies Act that you have to follow, and that what makes it daunting when you want to start a business, especially a youth, and you don't have a lot of finance and you just want to register a company, and then suddenly there's a FICA compliance. Please supply us with your identity document, company registration documents, all of this.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Bank statements. Banks are going to ask you, okay, right, bank, here's, besides the bank fees. It's a lot.
It's just a lot.
But you do need to understand, one, your industry, and then two, which regulatory body governs your business. So if you are processing data a lot, or people, special personal information, maybe minors, you know that you're going to have to answer to the information regulator a lot more. That piece of legislation you need to understand and study a lot more. If you're going into farming, look at agricultural, industry practices and stuff. So understand your industry to know what law is applicable to your
Research.
industry.
If it's important and you're putting in the work, you need to research. That comes down to research. So very briefly, just to close off, 3 tips from today, like a takeaway. If somebody didn't get a chance to really listen to this whole session, what would you say are the 3 most important things of each? About compliance.
About compliance.
Yes.
So as Nola and I have been saying, see who is your regulator, what is your product, where can the rights and responsibilities lie for the use of that product, and know where you can find your resources, know who your regulator are, know their website, a link up to subscribing to their services. Look out, especially funding is a big thing for businesses. Government spends billions on funding business activities. Find out where your incubators are. Find out what the CEDAs and the CFAs and the IDC, not the IDCs, the PRCs, what they can offer depending on where you are. The DTI has got wonderful manufacturing services and funding that it does offer to stimulate the manufacturing industry in South Africa. Know your industry, know where to find your resources, and know where to find your funding.
Yeah. For me, it would be, get a proper law firm would actually be the good start point to actually.
KISCH IP.
Yes, KISCH IP. No, Google KISCH IP. It's as simple as that. We can give you legal advice to know, because it's daunting to just Google something,
yes.
and you're gonna get flooded with all this research. So find someone that you're able to talk to. If it's not a law firm, a mentor, someone. Look at programs like this that can give you the research, the base research to start. That's your first tip when you're running a business, because you get overwhelmed with information.
Yeah.
So yes, go to KISCH IP, and we're happy to give you a consult on that. But yes, do your research. That's your first tip, and then understand what is it that you want to offer. How do you want the world to know you? What is your brand, right? Be able to identify that brand in order to do the trademark registration stuff, but in order to sell yourself, so that people know, oh, I want that product, and don't go for your competitor and stuff. So develop a brand, and I actually think those are the two most important steps to start
distinct.
with. Yes,
Research, be distinct. Well, that was very insightful. Thank you so much to Krista and Lalela for joining me. And that was it for session 3 of #BeReady. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. And I just can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this very, very insightful session. Thank you once more, and always stay ready.